Well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Can you hear me at the back? Give us a little wave if you can hear me. Great stuff. Excellent. My name is Rob Smith. I'm going to be sort of facilitating this evening, but I'm absolutely not the star of the show. It's these two gentlemen over here. I'll introduce them properly in a moment. This is the third of our Medway Matters live events. And the first one we had at the Howard School over in Rainham. The second one we had in the Chatham Historic Dockyard. The third one we have come here to the 100 of Who. It's a really important part of the council's drive to have more opportunities for engagement with local people, to keep you updated on some of the plans that the council has, but also, more importantly, for you to let them know the things that are bothering you. A couple of points of basic housekeeping. We are not expecting to have any sort of alarm go off this evening. So if the alarm does go off, you will have to get up very calmly from your seats and head to either the exit that you came in over there or the fire exit over there. Do not try and use that fire exit over there because you won't be able to get out of it. Bathrooms, it says, are on the right of the hall, so through here, I believe. And we've got an interesting agenda for this evening. I'll just run through that briefly before we get into any of the speakers. We will be hearing from Vince Maple, who is the leader of the Labour and Cooperative Group, who took over the leadership of the council in May of 2023, so very nearly 2 full years now. He's going to be taking a look back at his time in office and some of the key issues of today, and talking about some of the challenges and the achievements, hopefully, over the last couple of years. We will then be hearing from Richard Hicks, who is the Chief Executive of Medway Council, and coincidentally has also been in post for just about 2 years. Richard is going to be talking about Medway's priorities and key projects, but he's also going to be talking a bit about a much broader issue, which is local government reorganisation. That's a huge change that's going to be coming down the tracks. That's going to mean some very big changes for all the councils in Kent and Medway. After we've had those two presentations, then we'll get into the meat and drink of the evening, which is your opportunity to put your questions directly to not only Vince and Richard, but also we're going to be joined by Councillor Theresa Murray, who is the Deputy Leader, and Leanne Farrack, who's the Deputy Chief Executive with the bewilderingly broad set of stuff to look after. She's Director of Children and Adult Social Care, Education, Special Educational Needs, and Public Health. So that really is a broad remit. I know that lots of you will obviously have questions that you're burning to ask. Please wait until we get to the questioning bit of the evening to actually do that. I know that not everybody is going to be comfortable speaking publicly. We've got members of the team dotted around with microphones. So when we ask you to ask a question, put your hand up. We'll come to you with a microphone. If you're not comfortable with speaking into the mic and you'd rather be a little bit more anonymous, then you can use a card. We've got cards that are on each of your seats. And I think I've got one over here. Cards like these, write your name and your question on it. If you don't want your name to be mentioned, then just write anonymous on it. But if we don't get the opportunity to get through all of the questions this evening, and given that there's a lot of you here, that may well be the case, we are going to endeavour to make sure that all of the questions are answered. So if you please include an email, contact details, so that we can get to you if we don't get the opportunity to actually ask you a question during the evening itself. As this is our third event, we would love to hear your views as well. So there's some evaluation sheets on your chair. Please do fill those in, and we can hopefully make these events going forward get better and better. And we are, and this is an important thing, we are videoing tonight. You can see we've got 2 cameras at the back of the hall there. We've also got a photographer who is going to be moving around. This is going to be shared on the council's YouTube channel so that people who haven't been able to make it this evening can see it. If you really don't want to be included in that, if you really don't want to be photographed, please let members of the council team who are here, they've all got lanyards on, let them know as soon as possible, please, so that we can then avoid you being photographed if you don't want to. So before we get into the actual presentation part of the evening, I'd just like to call to the stage a chap who's allowed it to all happen here this evening, the principal of the 100 of Who Academy Trust, Carl Guerin-Hassett. Carl.
Firstly, welcome. I'm not used to speaking in a mic. Normally I'll do an assembly without a mic to 200, 300 children here. But firstly, a big welcome to the 100 Who Academy. I won't keep you too long, but I'm immensely proud of this school. I just want to share some of the things we do, things that were recognised recently. Now, if you do know the school, it was put in special measures back in 2009, and it changed its name from the Comprehensive School to the 100 Who Academy. That's quite timely to mention, as last year we had an inspection at Easter, and the inspectors judged that they believed that we would be outstanding, which was a big achievement in those 15 years. And then, as we go forward, there is another name change coming, but this time not for a negative reason. Okay, we are part of the Lee Academy's Trust, and the Lee Academy are going to rebrand all of their schools to include it. So from September, we will no longer be the 100 Who Academy, but we will become Lee Academy 100 of Who. Parents have all been made aware and uniform changes, but I thought it was a good thing to share. Now, my vision at the school is about making my pupils more than just educated. Okay, and what that means is they are going to get good results, they're going to go and be successful, but they're going to be great people. I don't want them going to interviews and not standing out. Okay, so we are an IB World School. We got that achievement in 2022. And what that means is we are delivering an international baccalaureate, and we're trying to develop the people. Okay, we don't just teach a curriculum. We teach it within a framework that develops internationally minded individuals. And so I'm very proud to work here. We are an all-through school. So if you don't know, we have got a nursery on site. We've got a primary school, secondary. Part of the secondary, we've got a special resource provision for autism, and we are sixth form. And now we're closing the loop, because in sixth form, we just started offering a T-level in education, so now our sixth formers teach in our nursery. So actually, we are closing that loop, and every year we look to get better. I just want to share one of our USPs, and believe me, if anyone has watched Adolescence, the school is nothing like that, okay? That is a TV series. The children are really well behaved, but one of the big issues in the country is about mental health and supporting not just children but also adults who may not have had the support in the past that they need. So one of the things recognised by Ofsted was that we actually do outreach for free in the local area. So if you're not aware of this, okay, you can refer in to our school. I have trainee counsellors. Our GP, local GP refers people to, and we offer free counselling to adults. You haven't got to have a child here. You haven't even got to have a child in one of our local schools. It is just, I just want to reach out to the community, because I think if we all work together to make a better community, that's a better world. So I just want to say thank you all for coming, and I'll hand back over.
Well, now, without any further ado, I'll get straight into it. Vince, please.
Thank you very much.
The floor is yours. Vince Maple, the leader of Medway Council.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob, and Carl, thanks to you for what you and your team do for our young people here in Who every single day. That is a journey which rightfully deserves that round of applause, and actually lots more. To take a school from where this school was to where it is today is no mean feat. So on behalf of those parents, pupils, and the wider community, thank you. And don't stop what you're doing, whatever this school is called. We need you to be doing that every single day. And that's a journey which, across Medway, we want to see. We have now had 22 months, nearly 23 months actually, of Labour and Cooperative Administration. And it's been an absolute privilege to serve this community, 285,000 residents, everybody with their own story to tell, everybody wanting to do the very best for them, their community, their family, and we're here to help you on that journey. Do we get everything right? No. And I'm sure one or two of the questions tonight will tell me where we could do things better. But one of the things you'll always get from me is honesty. And from that perspective, it's about saying, look, let's look at the good stuff we're doing. Let's look at the immediate challenges and the challenges over the next 3 to 5 years. One of the proudest achievements actually ties into what Carl was saying earlier on. I've been a councillor for nearly 18 years. When I started, I had a smaller waistband and no grey hair in my beard. And one of the most shocking days of my time as a councillor was back in 2019, when our children's services were deemed to be inadequate, the worst possible rating you could receive from Ofsted. And the worrying thing about that was lots of people were surprised about that. The system wasn't working. And over that period of time, up till when we got the latest Ofsted rating of good, we've been on a journey collectively for our 63,000 young people, because they deserve that. They only get one chance. So, as I said at a council meeting just a couple of weeks ago, that was an emotional day for me, because actually as council leader, and I recognise that some of that journey was not under our leadership, but receiving that great news that the services that our most vulnerable young people are receiving are good, and we're absolutely on a journey to move from good to outstanding. That's not easy. That isn't easy, as Carl will be able to tell you, but we're on that journey. And that means working with partners, having some of the best staff that you can have in local government, and I'm really proud of that. And one of the reasons I raise that is because actually, probably the most documented thing over the last 23 months or so has been our financial position. You know, that's been well documented. We've had financial challenges, and we're working through that. I'm proud of the way we've approached that. We've brought in sector experts, SIPFA, who have looked at that, and they've done 2 reports on where we are at the moment. One which said actually Medway Council's finances were of grave concern. It's a couple of months into our term of office. And the most recent report, and I'd encourage you, if you're sat in this room tonight, I'd encourage you to read this when you get a chance, shows that we're on a positive progression with that journey. Still more to do, and that has meant some difficult choices as we've gone along, but those have been the right thing to do, the responsible thing to do, because as taxpayers, you deserve to know that your taxpayers' money is being spent in a way which is effective, efficient, and dealing with those challenges. So when we take in and spend £620 million a year, it's a lot of money. And people go, well, where does all of that go? So we spend more than £1.2 million every single day on residents across the 24 wards of Medway, just on these 3 issues: adult social care, children's services and housing. £1.2 million a day. So you can see those are huge challenges, and often that will be for a very small percentage of our community who need the very biggest amount of help. And that's the right thing to do, and it's what I know people in this room would want to see us doing. We'll always try and be as efficient as possible, of course, but we'll do that in a way which is compassionate and making sure at the heart of that are the individuals and families who need our support. But of course, we've also got the day job of a council as well to be getting on with. Lots of people don't access those services. So I'm really proud that despite those financial challenges, we continue to have a weekly bin collection. Next time you're on a WhatsApp group with people outside of Medway, ask if they've got a weekly bin collection. I think I know what the answer probably is. And that's a political choice. That's a difficult political choice because it's expensive, but it's the right thing to do, and residents expect that. We've also got the free bulky waste collection. Again, something that was got rid of under the previous administration. We've brought that back, not because it's a nice thing to do, although it is a nice thing to do. Actually, it's about trying to cut down on fly tipping, something which I know blights urban and rural communities alike, something which there's a number of councillors in this room. Every single one of the 59 councillors in this room would have received emails at points around fly tipping. So that free bulky waste collection is still there. We still continue to have a really positive, upbeat, fantastic events programme. We've got some really great stuff happening for VE Day. And I want to highlight the brilliant Elaine Cutting, who did a bit of a first for me. Whilst we were in the budget meeting, and I was really pleased to allocate some funding to this, Elaine from your parish council, before I had sat down and finished the debate, had already emailed to say, how can we get hold of some of this money for our community? So huge thanks to parish councillors, not just here in Who, but across the Medway towns, really doing a critical, vital community job, having those conversations, being those voices right at the heart of our small communities, doing that job day in, day out to make sure that, the Medway Council can get those voices heard directly, and things like tonight as well. And we had a conversation at the last Medway Matters Live back at the dockyard around an unadopted road. That was raised, that road is now adopted. That's why we do things like tonight. We'll talk about the big issues, but if you've got a small issue, we want to hear that as well. We may not have the detail, Richard and I, along with Teresa and Leanne, We know a fair bit. We don't know every scintilla of information about every one of our hundreds and hundreds of services. So if you don't have the exact detail tonight, don't worry, we will get it to you. But from my perspective, as we move forward, and I'll finish on this, it's been a real privilege. We've had challenges, but we're getting through them. We're working collaboratively. As we move ahead, 2 or 3 big things for me. Firstly, we need to have a local plan. If we don't have a local plan, and people in this audience probably know more than many others in Medway, you end up with speculative development. I want a local plan. I've got developers who want to work with us as a council, but we all want to see that local plan in place collectively. Really important. People want to have those things in place so that they know over the next 15 years what their communities will look like. And a local plan, as I know lots of people in here will know, although we always talk about housing numbers, it is about the ability to work, green spaces, education, all those things that make our communities what they are. And one of the other big things that I know Richard will talk a little bit about this as well, probably has taken more of my time and energy over the last few months, is local government reorganisation and devolution. So people will go, what's that all about? So for me, it's really simple. I got the 191 bus here today. Actually, it ran reasonably. Thank you very much for that. I've never been applauded for getting the bus, but thank you. And it got me here reasonably quickly, and the Arriva driver was kind because he helped somebody, and so that was very, very good. That isn't the experience every time we have. We have a bus service which is expensive, which is unreliable on the whole, which frankly could be better. And if you look up in Greater Manchester, under the powers of a mayor, you've got the B network. That's what I want for 1.9 million people, but certainly the 285,000 people here in Medway, because we deserve decent public transport. We deserve the ability to get more funding for skills. And that's why I think it's so important that we have that approach. And to unlock that now, government's been really clear. To unlock that, we are going to need to form new councils across the region of Kent. And I say the region of Kent because it helps with confusion around KCC, because it's, just for the avoidance of doubt, there are currently 14 councils in the region of Kent, 1 county, Kent, 1 unitary, Medway, 12 districts and boroughs. All of those will be gone at the end of this process. There will be, in my view, 4, but we're going to consult with residents over the next few months to see how many councils we will have and what the shape of those maps will look like. And have your say on that. When we get through that consultation, have your say. It's important because this will be the biggest change we've had arguably ever in local government, certainly in the last 50 years, although of course we were a bit of a front runner nearly 30 years ago in bringing together the former Rochester and Gillingham and a bit of KCC into one. Medway has worked as a council. You have never picked up the phone and phoned your councillor, and they've never said to you in the last 27 years, no, it's the other councillor for the area. Every other part of Kent has that problem. That's why I'm very supportive of unitary authorities. That's why I think Medway's not perfect as a council. No administration is perfect, but blimey, it's doing a lot of amazing stuff. I'm really proud of it. And look, we'll keep working as hard as we can for you as our residents as we move towards whatever the future of local government looks like. Thank you so much for giving up your time tonight, and I'm really looking forward to your questions. Thank you. Thanks, Rob.
So Vince Maple is the politician. Richard Hicks is the chief executive. So he is a council officer rather than an elected person, but the man who's actually going to make a lot of the decisions on a practical day-to-day basis about what happens with your services. So Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rob. And thank you very much, Carl and the team, for hosting us as well. Can I also thank my teams as well that have been here this evening, that have been on the stalls as well. Thank you so much for that. Done a fantastic job. Thank you very much. And can I also thank you, the residents, for being here this evening. Really looking forward to tonight's discussion. Just before I start the presentation, just wanted to give you a bit of background around me. So I'm Richard, the Chief Executive at Medway Council. Medway born and bred. I went to school in Medway. I live in Medway. And I've worked at Medway Council for 27 years. During that time, I've met a number of you in the room. And that's been my privilege to meet with you. The last 6 years, I was Deputy Chief Executive, and then I've been Chief Executive for almost 2 years, as Rob said. And I am proud of Medway. I believe Medway is a great place to live, to work, to learn, and to visit. As Vince says, we have a population of just over 285,000 people. It is home to 285,000 people. We are the largest urban area in the southeast outside of London. We are bigger than Plymouth and Portsmouth and Southampton and Reading and York and Brighton. And we are a great place to live because of our natural environment. I don't need to tell you guys about that. Our amazing green spaces that we have across Medway, our amazing heritage that I'm going to come back to shortly, and our connectivity that we're blessed with here in Medway, with fast train connections through each of our 5 main train stations, from Strood, 34 minutes into St Pancras. And Medway is a great place to work. We have 14,000 businesses across Medway. The value of our economy has doubled in a decade to well over £6 billion. And Medway is a great place to learn. Obviously, this is a fantastic facility. We have 100 schools across Medway. Our newest school, the Medway, the Maritime Academy, just down the road. We have 3 universities, 2 colleges. It is all about equipping our young people with the skills they need to secure the employment opportunities of the future. We have our amazing adult education team who are here with us this evening. So Medway is a great place to learn. And Medway is a great place to visit. Tourism is really important for our economy. We receive around 5 million visits every single year into Medway. It's worth about £350 million to our economy, 6,500 jobs. And we are blessed with such amazing heritage. We have the finest and tallest Norman castle in the country. We have the second oldest cathedral in the country, built just 7 years after Canterbury. We have the best preserved dockyard, dating from the age of sail. And we have rich connections with Charles Dickens, who drew on the people and places of Medway, no less than here, as the inspiration for some of his greatest works. Medway is a great place to live, to work, to learn, and to visit. And when Vince and I took up our respective roles, we were very clear on our vision for Medway. We want our residents, you, us, me, to be proud of Medway, whether that is for our green spaces or the school that we went to or the place that we live or the fact that Medway is welcoming. We want our residents to be proud and prouder of Medway. And we want Medway to secure the recognition it deserves as that great place to live, to work, to learn and to visit. And so we developed our One Medway Council Plan. We consulted with residents on this, and we then, from our plan, we devised 5 strategic priorities that will help us deliver against that vision. And I'm just going to take you through each of them in turn. So, first of all, quality social care and community services. We are a highly regulated, highly inspected organisation, particularly around our statutory services that we provide, around adult social care, children's social care, special educational needs, homelessness. But they're statutory services for a reason, because we are supporting the most vulnerable members of our communities. And we've been inspected on each of those areas over the recent period, and we performed strongly in all of them, giving you, our residents, that assurance that we are providing good levels of service. But I want us to ensure that we're also delivering those community services too, that are valued by so many members of our community. So whether it is our festivals and events, we've got the Sweeps Festival coming up, whether it's our library service, libraries here this evening as well. These are the services that provide vibrancy and animation and dynamism to the place of Medway. So it's really important that we are providing those services too. And a number of those services are represented here this evening. A particular initiative that I'm proud of, I've been involved with it since its inception, is Child Friendly Medway. Child Friendly Medway is all about ensuring the voice of our children and young people is at the heart of our thinking, at the heart of our plan making and our policy making. Just last year, the child-friendly Medway team engage with over 114,000 children and young people across Medway, and the child-friendly Medway team are here this evening. And whether that was our Super Saturday event that saw 30,000 people come into Chatham, or whether it's our City Hall events. We've run 8 of our City Hall events. They are opportunities for about 200, similar kind of audience this evening, 200 children and young people to be able to put their issues, their questions directly to me and to Vince and talk to us about what it's like to grow up in Medway. We've held 8 of those. We've got our 9th that's coming up soon. Also for our Love of Reading programme that we run in conjunction with our library service, a fantastic scheme, and of course our Who Family Fun Day. And I was there for that. I'm looking for Ron, saw Ron there. That was a great day for Child Friendly Medway too. I want this place, Medway, to be their place. The second of our strategic priorities is around education, jobs and a growing economy. Over 90% of our schools are good and outstanding. Both of our colleges are rated Ofsted good. We have 3 amazing universities. I want our young people to learn in Medway and to stay in Medway, see their careers in Medway, chase their futures here in Medway. I want them to find jobs with some of these amazing companies that we have in Medway, not least BAE. So BAE on the Rochester campus has been in Medway for over 25 years now, expanding their campus. They are state-of-the-art facilities that they are investing in, £220 million investment that will see their employee base grow from 1,700 staff to around about 2,000. They are world leading in terms of advanced engineering and aerospace, and they are a Medway company. And I want to see our economy continue to grow. PwC produce a report, Good Growth for Cities, and they rank 52 of the biggest cities across the country. So London, Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, and ourselves. We are ranked 8th most improved on that Good Growth for Cities index. The Centre for Cities takes 63 cities from across the country. We are ranked 12th on that index in terms of productivity. We've got a phenomenal story to tell about our economy, but our economy is growing from a low base, and we need to ensure the benefits of that economic growth reach out across all of our communities. And we've got more to do in terms of Key Stage 2. So exams for 11-year-olds, there's more that we can do in that space. Our third strategic priority, safe, clean, green and connected communities. Crime has fallen by 10% over the last 5 years. Antisocial behaviour is down year on year. We're investing in our green spaces. We have 8 green flag accredited parks across Medway. I was talking to the Broom Hill guys earlier on. We have our weekly bin collections. We are making progress towards our net zero ambitions. Climate change team is here as well. But there is still more work for us to do in terms of the perceptions of crime. And being honest with you, there are some areas of our public realm that are not good enough. We need to do more in those spaces. Our fourth strategic priority, health and well-being for all. Fair to say, over the last few years, we have made terrific strides in terms of smoking cessation. We are working with health colleagues to bring forward a new healthy living centre in Chatham over the summer. The James Williams Healthy Living Centre. Public health team are here as well. We are doing a lot of work around the wider determinants of health. 80% of a person's health and well-being is determined by wider social considerations. It's outside of those clinical interventions. So our health and well-being is largely determined by our access to employment, to education, to green spaces, the built environment, decent quality homes and housing. Really important that we can pull on those levers to improve people's health and well-being. And prevention is a really big agenda for us. We want to see what early interventions we can make to prevent individuals and families falling into crisis or needing more acute health support, intervene early to promote their independence so that people can live more fulfilled lives without needing that greater support from us. But there is more work to do. I know you will tell me, I am sure, that access to healthcare facilities must be improved. We need to work with our health partners to bring that about. We know there is more work to do around childhood obesity. And actually, health inequalities are a real big challenge for us. How can it be right that an adult man living in Cuxton will live 10 years longer than an adult man living in Chatham, just 5 miles down the road? There is more work that we need to do around our health inequalities. Homes and housing. I want to be clear about this. Demand for homes and housing is far outstripping supply, whether that's here on the peninsula, whether that is across Medway, or whether that is nationally. That is something that we are having to grapple with. And I put up on the screen here, and Paul's in the room, but I put up on the screen a number of developments across the peninsula, some really quality developments that are respecting the character and the nature of the peninsula. But you will be familiar with those. But there is development that is going on right the way across Medway. St Mary's Island took 30 years to complete that scheme. 1,700 homes now completed. 85% of those homes went to Medway residents. Rochester Riverside, which is our flagship regeneration scheme, 1,400 homes in prospect, 500 homes built, all of them occupied, 150 further homes being under construction even as we speak. 74% of those homes in the latest phase on Rochester Riverside went to ME postcodes. So, much achieved, but much more to do. Vince spoke about the money. And I know it's end of year, so I know a number of people are working on final accounts and the rest. Important, I think, that we set out where our funding comes from. And Vince has mentioned the £620 million of spend that we incur each year. Largely, we are funded by government grant, but you'll see the second one down there is council tax. Now, again, I want to be open with you. Of course, we put up council tax by 5% this year. And actually, authorities up and down the country did exactly the same. That 5% council tax increase, that was a tough decision for us, but we felt it was the right decision that we had to take in the face of that growing demand for our services. That 5% increase in council tax will bring about £8 million into the council. Hold on to that number, I'll come back to it a bit later on. And for a Band D property, and 75% of properties across Medway are Band D or lower, that's going to equate to a bit under £10 a month in terms of that increase. I know every penny counts. I know that is tough for households under strain, but we felt that was the right thing to do. There's also a line on here about exceptional financial support. Along with 29 other authorities across the country, we sought exceptional financial support from government, which was enabling us to make investment to bring about positive change in our services so that we could continue on our route map to financial sustainability. This speaks to the unprecedented challenges that there are in the financial environment facing all public sector organisations. And in terms of where we spend the money, adult social care is 25% of our total spend. That's supporting about 6,000 residents. That's about 2% of Medway's overall population. But it is right that we are supporting some of the most vulnerable people in our communities. Put that alongside our cultural and leisure spend, that's about 4% of our total budget. But our libraries, our theatres, our events, our festivals, our green spaces, our sports centres, they touch all of our residents. So it's really important that we try and maintain the balance across those respective needs and requirements. Now, we are fortunate to be here in Who this evening. So there are 3 initiatives that I just want to touch on. We are seeking to engage with residents across the peninsula on our Who Community Facilities framework. We're attempting to speak with communities about what your needs and what your aspirations might be for community facilities out into the future. We've also secured £3 million for Who's Who from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. That is all about celebrating the heritage and the habitats of the peninsula. It's a 4-year programme. Conservation work will be engaging with residents and with volunteers about that scheme. And Deangate Community Parkland. I know that is a highly valued green space that is highly treasured by residents on the peninsula. We are so pleased that we are bringing that forward. We've consulted, we've taken it through planning. We are going to be starting works on it this year for opening the following year. And can I thank the volunteers that were involved in the planting of 3,500 trees on Deangate Community Parkland. And the local plan. So as Vince mentioned earlier on, and I'm sure the local plan will come up this evening, the local plan is our blueprint for the future for Medway out until 2041. As Vince said, as soon as I say local plan, everyone is going to be thinking about homes and housing and development. And actually, in the context of the government's desire for 1.5 million homes to be built out across the country during the course of the lifetime of this Parliament, that actually translates into targets that are given to local authorities. Ours is about 1,600 homes every single year. That will mean over the lifetime of this plan, we would expect to see about 28,000 homes across Medway. But actually, our local plan is the opportunity for us to ensure that we get the right homes in the right places, supported by the right infrastructure. And actually, the local plan is not just about homes. As Vince said, it is about employment too. It's about our green spaces. It's about our high streets. It's about connectivity. It's about getting around Medway too. So absolutely, this is about establishing that blueprint into the future, ensuring that we can have sustainable development that meets the needs of our local communities whilst respecting the nature and character of our places. Now, talking of the future, and Vince did reference this as well, I did want to talk about local government reorganisation. This is a once-in-a-generation change that the government has in prospect. It's been described as seismic. Government issued a white paper just before Christmas. A white paper is a policy statement of the government's intent in a particular area. And government want to bring about greater devolution across the country. In a highly centralised country like England is, devolution of powers, taking powers out of Westminster and Whitehall and putting those powers into the hands of locally elected mayors, seemed to us to be a good thing, to bring powers around strategic transport, strategic planning decisions, employment support, economic development. So for that reason, we, together with the 12 district and borough councils, the county council, said that we would support an elected mayor for the region of Kent and Medway, because we wanted to bring those powers, that funding, that voice that the mayor would have for the benefit of our residents here. Unfortunately, we were not successful. Half of the applicants that applied for it were not successful either. But also, in the white paper, it's envisaged that we would see local government reorganisation right the way across the country. That means the establishment of unitary authorities. As Vince said, Medway Council has been a unitary authority for 27 years. But actually, as Vince also mentioned, if you live elsewhere in Kent, you would not have the benefit of a unitary authority. So if you lived in Maidstone, you would have Maidstone Borough Council would be picking up your bins, would be sweeping your streets, would be running your leisure centres, providing housing, council tax. And then Kent County Council would be providing the libraries, adult social care, children's social care. With unitary authorities, as you have here in Medway, there is one organisation that is providing all of those local government services. And we are absolutely advocating that approach. We think that is the right approach. Government want to bring in a kind of more simplified, streamlined approach for areas. And these are broadly the timelines. These are big changes, but they are some way off yet. They will not come into place until we expect about 2028. Now, what it does mean, and don't worry about the detail of these maps, these are purely indicative. It does mean that people are now thinking, so if we've got the county of Kent, what would that mean in terms of the numbers of unitaries and where would the lines on the maps be? Government have said one of their criterion was that the population would be about 500,000. As we mentioned earlier, Medway's population is not quite of that size. Given the population of Kent is 1.9 million. The government's expecting 500,000 in terms of the population. We are advocating for 4 unitary authorities across the county. Full disclosure, some people are saying 3, we are being very clear on 4. But what we will be doing during the course of these discussions as we build towards our final proposals, we will be engaging with our residents. We will be working with our partners to find the best solutions for local government in Kent and Medway. This is a once-in-a-generation change, and I want to make sure that we get these changes right so that they last for the next 50 years as well. So, we have much to be proud of in Medway. We have achieved much, but we have much more yet to do. And I look forward to hearing your questions, your thoughts, your reflections on how we can work together to make Medway an even better place to live, to work, to learn and to visit. Thank you very much.
Executive Richard Hicks. So now we're going to move on to our question time panel, and this is the opportunity where you can actually start asking some questions. As I say, we've got various people dotted around with microphones who will be able to come to you when you put your hands up, and I'll pick people out. I'll do my best to pick out as many of you as I can. Some of you will be disappointed, so I'm sorry about that. We'll fit in as many as we can. Just as a quick reminder again, though, if you have a question that you want to ask and you don't want to ask it physically, I can read it out, write them on the card, hand them over to somebody with a lanyard. They'll reach me here and we'll go through and we'll ask as many of those as we can as well. And just as a little reminder, I've been joined on the stage here as well by Councillor Theresa Murray, Deputy Leader, and by Leanne Farrick, who's the Deputy Chief Executive and Director of Children and Adult Social Care, Education, Special Educational Needs and Public Health. It's a hell of a title, isn't it? Yeah. Great. Okay. So we've got people. Who's with the microphones? Can we just hold them up? So we've got a couple here. Great. Okay. Well, we've got a gentleman in the middle here who's very keen and eager to ask a question. So we'll leap in with him, and we'll see how we get on.
Is it working? Yes, it is. Right, gentlemen.
And ladies.
Oh, and ladies.
Thank you.
At what point do we acknowledge or do we realise that we are overdeveloped for the infrastructure that we have? At what point? Yeah, I lost my mum last year and we had to have several visits to hospital, and on the last visit we spent 10 hours in a hospital corridor. Yeah, and you're still building more and more properties, you're putting more and more people in here. Can I ask, I mean, you mentioned that, you know, there's quite a lot of Medway residents. Actually, how many Medway residents are actually going into these new properties? Or are we importing people from outside Medway into Medway?
Right, okay.
Because there's an awful lot of that going on. I've got quite a lot to say.
Okay, well, the thing is, we
right.
do need, we've got a lot of people we need to get through.
With these new properties, right, where is the water coming from? Because water comes out the ground. Right, and there's only so many straws you can stick in the glass before that glass becomes empty. Yeah, so where is the water coming from? Once we've used the water and it's now coming out as waste, where are the water treatment plants to put it back into the system? Because I haven't seen any new water treatment plants put up. And if you go down the bottom of Four Realms Hill, you can actually smell the sewage smells coming from there, and it's not from the sewage plant, it's actually before it gets there.
Okay.
All right?
You've answered
electricity
17 different
supply.
elements there, and we're going to let the gentleman start answering it because we want to get other people answering questions as well. You've made a very powerful set of points there.
I've got more.
I'm sure.
I've got lots more.
So, Vince, I think that infrastructure is one of these really key elements, isn't it? People are quite reasonably deeply concerned about more and more house building going on if there isn't the relevant infrastructure going in with it.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. And I'll try and pick up some of it. Richard may want to, and again, Theresa and Leanne might from a kind of wider infrastructure, because of course infrastructure isn't just roads, it is health provision, and all the other bits and pieces that go alongside it.
We seem to do ready, fire, aim, not ready, aim, fire.
So, most people will tell you, I'm quite a happy bloke. I'm generally quite a happy bloke, quite a happy chap, most of the time. Since I've been leader of the council, I think I've only genuinely been very, very angry once. And that's when we were told we were not getting £170 million of investment that was promised to this community and the wider Medway, that it wasn't coming, that ship had sailed, that the government were not giving us that funding. Now, that wouldn't have been enough to do everything we need. Absolutely not. But actually, if you ask most people, would you like £170 million of investment or not? Most people will say, yes, please. And from that perspective, it would have dealt with some of the issues like roads, which I know are one of the key concerns. We may hear about more of that tonight. I think on the specifics around water, you raise a really important point. I think the accountability for Southern Water is critical in this, because I'm happy to answer the question. But it's about their accountability for.
Please, sir, please allow.
When you do planning permission, do you ask them first whether they can actually supply them? Or do you build the properties first and then expect them to supply them?
They're a statutory consultee. We have to, even if we didn't want to, we have to talk to them, and it's right we talk to them. I've got some strong views on Southern Water's operations more generally, but I think when it comes to this issue, you're right to say across, not just on the Who Peninsula or in Medway, across England, the lack of reservoir building over the last 40 years, frankly, has not been good enough. So we need to shout loudly about that. We will continue to do that. In Simon Curry, in my cabinet, I've got someone who's got decades of experience, is trusted by most communities who come into contact with him, because he's not just a politician. Not that politicians aren't great. Most politicians are great most of the time. He's also, more importantly than that, someone who's got decades of experience in the industry of biodiversity and the environment. So I'm really pleased he's my voice on things like the internal drainage boards, who are critical to actually making sure those conversations about how the system works as we move forward. So is Medway under-resourced when it comes to lots of its infrastructure, both its hard and soft infrastructure? Absolutely. Are we fighting hard for resources every single day? Do I get frustrated when developers say, yeah, we said we were going to give you that through Section 106, but we're not going to do that now? Our planning team is one of the best in the country, but actually the tools that they've got for them to hold developers to account, and not all developers, some are great, but some aren't great, and unfortunately it's those who often will not give those resources that we need to put forward. So we will keep fighting every single day for the resources that we need, both for the existing infrastructure, but also for those new properties as well.
Perhaps I could answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, perhaps I could answer. I can see lots of other people want to come in. So hello, everybody, and thank you for your question. I'm very sorry to hear what happened to your mum and to all of the family. Nobody wants to be waiting in the corridor, and no doctors and nurses want to be in that position either. But that problem is... Yeah, absolutely, which is good to hear, and everybody supports our hospital. That problem isn't only about the fact that we've got some housing happening here. It's about a very welcome thing that people are growing older and living much longer. My mum is 96 years old in a couple of weeks. I'm very proud of that. I'm very pleased for her. My grandchildren know 3 generations of their family. When I was a kid, I only knew one grandparent. Things are changing, and we've got to change with it. So one of the things that's happening, we're going to get a community diagnostic centre in Rochester, which will be doing things like MRIs, other forms of scanning, small investigative procedures, which will take pressure off the hospital. We're very hopeful that we can get a new elective surgery centre also in Medway to take pressure off the hospital, which means that the hospital will be able to decongest the site. They'll be able to move things around and build new facilities there. People who work at the hospital don't want a new hospital, but they definitely do want, because it would take 20 years, they definitely do want to make our hospital work better. And already some fantastic new facilities are there. There's a really good respiratory and cardiac state-of-the-art ward, so we want more of that. Those things, together with, you're absolutely right, we need a health centre on the peninsula. I'm a big advocate for that. Health is in my portfolio for the Cabinet. We're getting a new one in Chatham. We also need one in Strood. We're working with our health colleagues and at government level and with our MPs to make that point. We will make things happen in Medway, and if we get the local plan in place, we will be in a position to tell developers what we want our towns to look like and what infrastructure we need there.
We need a hospital. We don't need health centres, we need a hospital.
Okay, well, perhaps,
We've got a hospital.
Leanne, if I could just bring you in for a second, because what I want to just make clear here is what Medway as an authority can physically do, because you can't build a hospital. That's not within your gift to do, is it? You provide certain... Wait a moment. But these things are quite complex. So let's just be really clear what the local authority actually has the ability to do. So, Leanne, perhaps if you could just outline what your responsibilities
are. We work with our health partners, and Teresa's given some really good examples about how Medway is coping with demand, it's coping with people's expectations, all of those things. And I'm sorry to have heard what you said about your mother. That should never have happened. And if the Chief Executive of the Acute Trust was here today, she would say the same thing. And I can promise you that that issue about long waiting times in the hospital has been dealt with, because it's not, yeah.
I'll show you now. It has not been dealt with. That hospital is dangerous.
It is, I agree, yes.
And it's not the staff, it's the fact that it's overwhelmed.
But we have to bear in mind that... I'm not laughing at you. What I'm...
We're working with our health partners. The Integrated Care Board absolutely knows what the situation is in Medway. It absolutely does. No, they do. They do. They
absolutely work in the hospital, and they come home from work crying week after week because they cannot cope with the amount of people in that hospital. It is dangerous. People will die there because they had the perfect opportunity to build a brand new hospital where the Astor is and the pub, the Marston Rigging. You failed to build an opportunity, to build on that opportunity.
Okay, Vince.
That's where the hospital should have gone.
Can I just bring?
The hospital is located now is in the wrong place. It's too small and it is dangerous, despite the best efforts of the staff.
Okay.
And some of them, we've had this argument many times in friends, in groups like this. The staff do a great job, but even among the staff, there are people who perhaps ought not to be there.
Okay, sir, thank you very much. So, Vince, I want to come back to you on this because there's a lot of legitimate anger in the room around how health services are being managed and the number of people who are living in the area. Now, as the leader of the council, what is actually within your gift? What are you capable of doing? How can you influence government to try and change some of the things that are being talked about here? Because what the local authority cannot do is build a new hospital.
So I would say three things. And look, there are, I recognise two or three different comments there, and those are not unusual. You know, if there are difficult experiences, that absolutely people recognise it's not because the individual staff are not trying their very best. They're working tirelessly. You know, we think back 5 years ago, those people were literally saving lives and putting their own lives at risk. So the team at Medway Maritime are doing their best they can. Absolutely, as the most recent report, although it's nearly a year old now, there are some systemic problems there. And actually, one of the things that would help with that is to get some of those services into other areas within Medway. And we've seen other services like strokes go to other parts of Kent, having areas of specialism where you can get the very best expertise and make sure people can access that. So absolutely, we will always lobby hard. Teresa sits on some national local government boards to speak directly to Ministers, we will always work closely with our 3 MPs, whoever they are. I'll work with anybody who's working with me to bring the best outcomes for Medway. And we have a regular conversation with the current leadership of the Integrated Care Board. That's the body that looks after the NHS for the whole region of Kent and Medway. And they are absolutely, Leanne is right, they are absolutely aware of our concerns. We will continue to lobby them. Of course, they will be lobbied by all parts of Kent, because there are lots of areas perhaps of deprivation. There are lots of areas which frankly have not had the resources they need. They have been promised hospitals that weren't delivered over the last 14 years. So from that perspective, what you can absolutely have a guarantee from me and everybody on this top table tonight, this stage tonight, is that we will always put those arguments. Sometimes the NHS moves too slowly, not from a kind of day-to-day process, but from a strategic process. It can take years to get a piece of property signed over and agreed to take place. That moves too slowly. Wes Streeting made some announcements a couple of weeks ago. I'm hopeful that will cut some of that bureaucracy out. But that's not about the individual doctors and nurses and cleaners and all of those who are doing really, really good work under really stressful circumstances.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, okay. We've got a lady towards the front here. If we could bring a mic up to the front here, please.
You're public servants, remember it.
Yeah, that's why we're here. That's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
Hello. Is it working?
It is, we can hear you.
Yeah.
I'm going to change the subject radically. I'm not going to talk about hospitals, but not because I'm not interested.
No, of course. There's lots to talk about.
I'd like to speak to you about connectivity. You spoke about it a lot, but on the peninsula, we have one road on and one road off. If we have somebody that's ill that needs to go to the hospital, they're caught up in a 4-hour traffic jam. And if we have somebody that's waiting, having a heart attack, they're caught up in a 4-hour traffic jam coming to us. And then we've got the Lower Thames Crossing coming. Now, I've been to meetings where I've been told the uptake on the Sundridge Hill is 40% coming from the M20 up to the M2. Now, you're not going to sit there and tell me it's not going to make a difference to the Wainscott bypass, because it will. And my question is, how are you going to get around that? How are you going to make us in the peninsula more connected to Medway?
Shall I? And thank you for your question, and that certainly resonated with a number of people in the room, and that's a point, an issue that's been raised with us many times over the years, of course. One of the solutions we were trying to bring in and Vince mentioned the HIF funding, so that was where we were trying to bring forward improvements to the road network to improve that issue that we've got about the one road on and the one road off the peninsula. Unfortunately, a number of people in the room know the story around the Housing Infrastructure Fund that fell away. That was going to be our best chance to be able to seek to address this issue.
And I just want to be clear about this. That was under the Levelling Up programme, Department for Levelling Up, that they had pledged £170 million for road building, for infrastructure plans on the peninsula.
Yep.
And then at the 11th hour, did a U-turn on that and took that money away. So some of the things that you're talking about would have been addressed if that money had been forthcoming 2 years ago.
170, so thank you, Rob.
12,000 houses to get that money.
Yeah, but the £170 million would have been road investment, would have been community infrastructure investment as well. And thank you for that comment as well. There were proposals around trying to improve train connectivity too. However, exactly, I'm coming on to that. No, just wanted to address the gentleman's point over there. So what we are going to have to do is try and work through our local plan. Our local plan is all about trying to ensure we can build in connectivity. I want to be honest with you, I'm not going to be able to walk out of this room and say, I've got a solution for you. This is going to have to be something we're going to have to work through over time with our local plan. Yes, of course, it does mean there will be new homes being built on the peninsula, but actually all the way across Medway too. And as part of that, we will look for... We will.
Do it in Medway, but don't do it out here. The roads cannot cope, and the people that live here cannot cope with it.
And sorry, but to be fair, people will be saying that across Medway as well, which is why. Thank you. We can't really say no.
Okay.
Yeah. So could I also, sorry, just before we get on to show of hands, sir, so I was also asked a question about Lower Thames Crossing as well. So that's, I am.
You're skirting over government houses and trying to bury questions and not giving straight answers.
Right.
I'm asking the audience the question.
We're answering the lady's question.
People would like to stop all the houses being built in Medway.
Okay. And then...
Not everybody then.
No, not everybody. How many people would like their children to be able to afford to buy a house at some point in the future? So it's not completely different. They are connected issues, and part of the government's process is saying that across the country, 1.5 million homes have to be built.
Okay.
And that brings problems.
How many young adults of like 18 to 30 can afford these new houses that you're building? Because I can tell you something, our son has just put a deposit on a house, right? And we've had to give him half the money for it. Because he can't afford it, and he's got a young family. And you tell me, how many of these houses that you're building are affordable?
So we will come, Richard will come back to that, but I'm going to answer that question. So Medway's policy is 25% of all new builds should be affordable housing. Now, affordable housing, and there are colleagues here who sit on the planning committee, affordable housing has different interpretations. Some of that can be council housing, some of that can be part ownership with a housing authority or housing association, and lots of other different schemes as well. Housing First was a scheme.
And the list for the council properties and the list for the housing association properties are full.
Absolutely, because we haven't built enough homes.
Yeah.
We need to build more homes.
That's the point.
No, we don't need any more homes.
But the lists are full.
What is going to happen if we don't build any more homes to 5,000 people on the waiting list who need a home at all? What is going to happen to your son's children if we don't build more homes? We've got to put them somewhere, and we're putting them fairly and equitably across the whole of the borough. And there will be affordable homes as part of that.
Council-owned properties that were empty for over 6 months. If you're so desperate for housing, why weren't they filled up within the first weeks of them becoming available?
Well, if you'd like to tell us about that, and if they're still empty, we'll have a look at it. I see. How long ago was that then? How long ago was that?
About a year ago.
Okay. Well, things are changing and improving. We're getting as quick a turnover as we possibly can. We've bought lots of temporary accommodation because we've got so many people who are homeless. They had a huge cost of living crisis under Liz Truss when mortgages of people in this room and ours went through the roof, and some of those people lost their homes. Now, if you want to have people sleeping in doorways, if you want to have children and grandchildren and the next generation with nowhere to live and no hope and not being able to stay here in Medway, then yes, I suppose the answer is don't build any more homes. If you actually want people to have a future, if you want families to be able to stay together, if you want people to have something to look forward to and have an affordable home, we have got to get a local plan, build decent homes and make sure a good proportion of them are affordable. And if we don't do that, nothing will ever change, everything will get worse.
That's fine.
Okay. And I just want to say, I mean, clearly there's a lot of passion in the room this evening, which is brilliant. But if everybody just keeps shouting out and talking over each other, it will be difficult to get through as many subjects as we can. We've got another question up at the back here, please.
Good evening, panel. Just to address a few things that have been mentioned before. Regarding the HIF funding, there wouldn't have been enough in the 170 million to have built probably 2 yards of tarmac, 6 curbstones after the consultancy fees and everything else was taken out of it by people that were travelling around the country. Also, the council had Section 106 monies that they could have already put a slip road off of the bypass. They sat on it for 15 years until they lost that. That was for improvements from all of the housing that's been foisted on us over the last 15 years to improve the Santsburrell roundabout and to put the slip road from London coming into here. I'm very impressed that you've all managed to get here tonight, because any of us that live out here know that sometimes we sit 3-4 hours. When there's an accident at the tunnel, when there's an accident on the A2, it's the Peninsula people that suffer, not the Luton people, not the people that live at Capston, not the people that live at the top of Strood. Last week we had the tunnel shut, we had the A2 shut, we were cut off for hours. None of you were to be seen. And when Teresa's just mentioned a more of a national party political about what the Conservatives did, would that not have been prudent, if you're going to make it a national thing, to have had our actual MP here tonight, who really doesn't even know where we exist? Does she know where to get to who? Oh, and just regarding the housing, Teresa, come out here one day with me and I'll walk you around who and all the new builds, and you'll see all the new builds have been taken by people from Bexley, from Dartford, from London boroughs. Local people, local kids don't get those houses. Okay. Come out and I'll show you.
Thank you very much for your question. So there are a couple of key elements there. Section 106 money. So that is the money that developers should be putting aside for infrastructure stuff. That has historically been an issue. Where is the council at the moment?
This time last year, I attended an infrastructure thing here that your council set up for Sunderland. You took in excess of £70,000 from Hood Parish Council's 106 monies, and you gave it to PRS to come out here and scope for developers. Now, all the things that all of us people gave up our time to do, we thought was going to be helpful for the community out in the future, did not arrive. There's not been one thing. We've got no sports facilities that have been taken away from us promised. We've got no health hub promised. We've got no improvement to Arriva buses promised from that, even though Arriva buses were given 106 fees some 10 years ago.
Okay, Vince, Section 106.
So I'll say something on this, and I'm sure Richard might want to as well. So look, Section 106 is complicated. There's a it's complicated in the sense of some developers will come along and say, we're going to do this, and the community will get this. But the problem is that the developer will say in the Section 106 document, which is a legal document, that will be delivered to the community on the sale of the 249th, 499th home. But that is standard practice. That's not a Medway thing. That is standard practice. So I think it's about trying to make sure make sure wherever practically possible, everyone is clear on timescales. And I think actually we do a good job of that. And again, that communication happens particularly at planning committee, where the issue of Section 106 comes up on a regular basis. Ward councillors often fighting for additional resources for their wards, and that's the right thing for them to do. Sometimes.
Please allow him to finish his point.
I don't have the. I don't have the information on the 70,000, but because.
No, I'll do that.
But Richard will have some information on that. But more generally, quite often when it comes to things like health, one development by itself will buy you 0.2 of a GP. So it is sometimes about pooling that resource. And that's, again, I don't want to sound like we're going back to the key document, but actually having the local plan, so we know what those processes are going to look like over the next 15 years will be pretty critical. Well, I think that as well documented, we've only been in control of the council for the last less than 2 years. Other people can answer for themselves before that, but ultimately Medway Matters Live and the equivalent didn't happen before then. I'm really happy to be here and answering difficult, challenging questions. I'm a public servant. It's what I'm here to do. thank you for your question. And Richard may have some more detail on that.
So just to pick up the point around the community infrastructure framework. So I do know, it's been fed back to me, that there have been differences of views about how that has been handled. Can I say that was absolutely well-intentioned? That was us trying to engage with residents to get a view from you about what it is that you want to see into the future that will inform our local... No, please, could I...
Appoint people from your council, from your office, from within the council, from within Medway. Why would you pay a company from Bristol to come in here, totally unprepared? They didn't even have the right maps of the computer, and it was a whole lot more event. You still pay for in excess of £70,000, which the Hood Peninsula could have spent much more wisely if you asked our parish councillors. They would have said to you how to spend it.
Yeah. So we did want to get in external support to help us run that exercise, and I'm sorry if that did not land well. I know that it has resulted in a lot of engagement with residents out here on the peninsula who have given their views. Yeah, and I appreciate it hasn't always landed well, but there have been a number of people that have engaged with it and given us their views. These views are really important for us for the local plan, so that we can try and plan for these things that will take a...
This is what we've had this development. This is what you think we now need. We've now published it and you're using it to justify the local plan and more development.
So we're using it to inform the local plan in terms of what residents are looking for. Some of those issues about connectivity, those issues about community facilities as well. We were trying to do the right thing, so I apologise. I'm apologising to you personally now, to you all, if that did not land in the way that we would have hoped it did. But we were well-intentioned. We were trying to do the right thing. We were wanting to engage with residents on the peninsula to understand the issues that you want to see taken forward through the local plan, and that process will continue. Can I just pick up one more point, if that's all right, Rob? Thank you. Because you did raise the point about this kind of whole down from London thing, and we've had this issue about people coming in from outside of Medway. I can say to you that the demand, the homegrown demand for housing within Medway is outstripping supply. But as well, our colleagues at local authority did some really interesting research around the numbers of people that come from outside of Medway in and go out from Medway to live elsewhere. And actually, it is not the hugely significant thing that people sometimes talk about. When you look at the actual numbers, you will see that is not the phenomenon that people think. And actually, I'm with that position. I know there are people here in this audience who've seen it from their hands being raised. There are people in this audience that know we do need additional homes for the peninsula. We want to get the right homes in the right places with the right infrastructure, which is why we did that work.
I just want to bring in then for a moment Four Elms, the Four Elms roundabout. We've had a lot of people talking about how difficult it is to get in and out of the peninsula if the traffic snarls up. What are the actual plans that are in place for changing the road, particularly coming off the Wainscott bypass there?
Yeah, and if I can loop it back to the earlier question we didn't get a chance to address, which is about Lower Thames Crossing as well. So the Lower Thames Crossing, the expectation there is that that will be opened in 2032, so it's kind of 7 years away. We need to ensure that over that time we are working with government, working with the developers to ensure that we can mitigate the impacts, because I want to be clear too that will have an impact on our road network. We all know from driving around Medway, and I know that you're interested about the peninsula, and I drive around the peninsula too, and I see those issues that we experience, particularly on Four Elms Hill, but across Medway, the Lower Thames Crossing will bring some impacts into the Medway road network that we will need to address. And actually I was in conversation with my team just this afternoon about that very point. Got further conversations happening tomorrow about that, about what we can do to seek to mitigate some of the impacts that we will see in terms of our roads.
Can I just say, we've got the biggest ACMA, which is air pollution, at Four Elms. Everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
Nobody does anything about it. And now we know it's going to get worse. When you have your meeting tomorrow, could you mention that in passing, please?
So we did. So we put in place the air quality management zone. It's a kind of area to monitor that in terms of the kind of air quality in that particular area, and there are a couple of other places across Medway as well where we're monitoring that.
Ours is the best.
because everything is the best here. Because it is important to us that we get air quality right. We need to think about the number of cars that are on our roads. And actually, if I can say, I know you're going to say it's a blooming big hill up Four Elms Hill, but if we can think about, I know public transport is one of the things, we can think about active travel. If we can look at other ways, that people can get around Medway, that will be for all our benefit.
At the end of our village, where we are, we haven't got public transport because it never comes up over the hill.
Okay.
When it comes to all the pollution in the air that you're saying because of traffic and what have you, why the hell did you say, oh, that's a good place to put Amazon right there, right at the top of the hill, when they break down and you're stuck in the peninsula and you can't get out? Smart thinking, I thought.
So just to say, so I do sympathise about public transport. That was one of the things that came up in our community infrastructure framework discussions about public transport and how that needs to be better. I was on the peninsula just last week hearing some stories about actually when kids are wanting to go to school and there's only one bus that they can get and then the bus doesn't turn up, then they're going to be late for school. And actually that...
to come back into the village because there isn't the bus.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say we can, and this is why actually having a regional mayor is important. And I'll tell you why, because as much as I would like to, as leader of the council, the best I can do is try and cajole and use powers like Section 106. If we had a mayor, the mayor can take back control of public transport. And that's what we need. We need someone to be able to get a grip of public transport, which at the moment, no elected representative is allowed to, apart from mayors. So I really want to see public transport improved, and we've seen it in Manchester.
Mr. Cable, that you could manage to get at least one doctor in the surgery that we have in the village, that we haven't had a doctor in the surgery for the past 4 years or more. Yeah. Because we don't have a doctor that comes in, and yet you want to build more houses our way when we can't even get. I've been waiting 5 weeks to see a doctor, to even speak to a doctor down the phone, and still no luck. So come on, you know, what's the answer? Just keep building houses and promising us all this infrastructure, and maybe we'll all go away. Well, we probably will, because we're getting older and older, and to be quite honest, I'm glad I'll be dead by the time half this stuff starts.
Okay.
You want to answer about the doctor?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, if I just address what you said about doctor, and that definitely has been a long-term problem here. So we're doing a number of things. We're sponsoring graduates at the medical school. And the first 3, because we've only had a medical school here for 5 years, it takes 5 years for a doctor to qualify and then 2 more years to specialise. First 5 years has happened this year, and the first 3 doctors have qualified, and they're all going to work in Medway, and one of them is going to be a GP. And one of the first things that he did was go back to his old school, Strood Academy, to motivate other people to come into medicine. And I heard actually only last Friday that for every one place the university has got for medicine, there are 100 applicants, nearly always 40 from Medway. So there's enthusiasm and determination amongst our young people to come and be doctors, and we've got to make Medway as attractive as possible for them to stay here. So they will need somewhere to live, they'll need schools for their children, and they'll need decent places to work. On that local issue, I'll go back to the commissioners about that, because it has been very difficult to recruit a doctor to come here. And I think there are reasons about the individual practice, there are other reasons about things locally that have happened, and that isn't acceptable. The other thing, can I say?
No, wait a minute, you're using paramedics now.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She cannot give you any medication. She cannot diagnose you what you've got. And in the end, she sends you to the hospital that's packed with people who are queuing up like sardines, we were the other day, for over 3 hours to get an x-ray done, just to be told that you need to make an appointment because you obviously need to see a doctor.
Well, that's why. That's the reason why we need to change the legislation and change the training to have more grades of people who can do prescribing and working with doctors. What GPs say to me is, if the escalation route is always me, why are you bringing in these other people? That's a very valid point that you make, and it needs changing, and Wes Streeting is aware of it, and we're trying to work with the medical schools to make it happen. I wouldn't denigrate a paramedic who are trying to do their best. That's good. That's good. That's good.
But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is you're doing it all the time to everything. These places out here, we need infrastructure.
Yes.
And infrastructure means we need all these houses that you want to build for all these children that want to go. Most of the kids on the peninsula get to about 16, 15, 16, their parents lift up, move. They go elsewhere. We get left with empty houses and then more youngsters. We're getting small children, yes. But the majority of the peninsula are elderly.
Okay.
Well, we've got
You keep going on, Vince's going on about libraries. We lost our library bus.
Okay, so we're going around in kind of a big circle, absolutely. And a big part of the issue is around money and having to make impossible choices because as a local authority you have limits to what you can physically do. There are other bodies like the NHS or like Highways England that are involved in these things. But you as a local authority do have to make some very tough decisions about where money is spent. Now, Rita Yaxley has written a question, why do you spend so much money on things like the Medway Mile, etc., and then cut some services such as children's free swimming?
So, thank you, Rita, for the question. I appreciate that. We had to take some tough choices. There's no doubt of that. As I said in my opening remarks, the independent CIPFA report, not my words, so not party political, but CIPFA said, sentence number 1 of the report, it's on the council website, Medway Council's finances are of a grave concern, are in a grave position. So that meant that myself and Teresa and the Cabinet, and ultimately the council as a whole, the whole council votes on the budget, had to take those difficult decisions. Some of those were taken in year as well. So, of course, you know, I'd like to be doing everything for everyone all the time, but the reality is the resources don't allow that. And that is sometimes about taking tough choices. We've taken tough choices on events. So I was with someone just the other day asking why did we cut the summer sweeps? And actually, Summer Dickens. I've said that twice in a row now. Summer Dickens, because part of the reason for that is because we still have, you know, a Dickens festival at Christmas, and we have the Sweeps Festival nearby. So there is still that offer for the residents of Medway, and that's for everybody, you know. And actually, we get lots of people come from far and wide to enjoy those events as well. So, absolutely, we've had to take some tough choices. Specifically on the swimming, we've ensured that there is a number of concessions available, particularly during school holidays, and indeed this year, if anybody's a member of the sports centres, including your Premiership membership has frozen. There's been no increase in that this year. Again, in part because we've seen numbers of memberships going up quite considerably. People enjoy using those facilities, but of course they need to be resourced. So we were able to, even in those difficult financial situations, were able to freeze that particular annual charge.
Richard.
Could I, thank you, Vince. You are.
Those t-shirts cost money. Climate change and everything else. How many people need a t-shirt to say the Medway Mile?
So, if I can, Rob.
Anything that involves parents, going to the bridge over the other side isn't easy for them. The same as the other question I asked is Deangate is not in an accessible place for parents to take their children for a swim. What are you going to do about
Okay, Richard.
because they need to be able to walk there?
So thank you, Rita, for your question. I am really proud of our events and festival offer that we put on across Medway. We have one of the largest free events and festivals programs across the country. There were some people that were saying they didn't like that. I am very proud of our events and our festivals that we run that are free. I've said in my presentation that we have to take some really difficult decisions. There are statutory services that we have to run, that we have to deliver by law. But as I said, it's right that we do that because we are protecting the most vulnerable members of our community. But actually, I want us to be running festivals and events. And the Medway Mile event, I was really proud to take part in the first one and have taken part in many of those Medway Mile events myself personally. When I see 3,000 people who are taking part in those Medway Mile events across multiple generations, what we are trying to do is encourage people to be physically active. And it doesn't matter whether you run or you walk. And I've seen 3 generations of families that are taking part in it. And so what we do on the free T-shirt, we're trying to encourage people to participate. And actually, we've moved on from providing free T-shirts now.
Okay, we've probably got around 10 minutes left.
It's quite a lot of people who've been...
The lady at the front.
We have got
the lady at the front there. Oh, okay, the lady just behind.
Elaine wants another go, I think.
Hello, good evening. I'm actually
yep.
stuck in this position, that's why I can't move now.
and relax.
I do appreciate, thank you for seeing. I know that you probably don't want to go back to housing, but I do have a specific question, please. It's not just a case of building the houses. My concern is the appropriateness of the size of the housing that you're putting. Can I give 2 examples, please? Just to make sure people understand this. Is Church View, for example, I've been here for 4 years and that has doubled in size. A new build, they're all 4-bedroom detached. There's also 134 houses going up in Stoke Road. I believe the majority of those. These are not within anyone's reach, yet you're saying that they're needed. I just wonder about integration and appropriateness.
That's a really good question. Thank you for that. I'd say a couple of things. So, as I said earlier on, I've been on Medway Council for 18 years. And throughout that time, and you saw some of the planning team here, as I said earlier on, one of the best planning teams in the country, not my words, the words of people elsewhere. Actually, we will get an assessment as to what does Medway need. And that's not about specific wards, that's about across the housing requirement more generally. So at points, there's absolutely a need for those bigger family houses. But at other points...
They're all literally inches from each other. It's just all 4 bedrooms. I don't see how that's really helpful.
So sometimes those houses, if you look across the whole piece, if you look at individual developments, of course some will have similar types of houses, particularly if it's 20 or 30. I'm not sure the exact number of that development. But of course, if you've got a development, Richard mentioned St Mary's Island, which is a big scheme that's taken 20 years, that has got everything from 1-bedroom flats to 5-bedroom houses and everything in between. So, and we need all of those. And the point you make around integration, there are some really good developers out there who, I use the phrase pepper potting. So if you go around some developments, you will go along a street, you will have no idea what, and it'll be 25% properly social rented in some cases, so traditional affordable, let's call it that language, whatever you want to say, but you won't know because all the houses will look exactly the same. So in that sense, no stigma because you're in a home that somebody owns and somebody else is in a home that's owned by a housing association or by the council. And that's worked quite a lot. In other developments, not actually in Medway, but other parts of the country, I've seen the complete reverse of that, where you have a big development And in this corner of the development, it's a social housing. No. But I can tell you on the peninsula, because I've been round them, there are developments which have got pepper potted housing. And that's, for me, as someone who wants to see community integration, that it doesn't, the tenure of your house doesn't matter, it's your home, that's what I want to see. Now, some developers are really good at that, some could be a lot better, and again, our planning department will always work the very best that they can to encourage that pepper potting approach. And of course, depending on the size of the development will depend on how many there are and the type of affordable housing. As I said earlier on, affordable housing is everything from council housing, and we still own some, to part ownership with a housing association.
And kind of following on from the question there, Peter Slaugh's asked, slightly at the other end of the scale, the 2,000 caravans on the Haven Holiday Park at All Hallows, has that use been factored into thought processes around the local plan, especially given the fact that you've got a single track road going in and out to the caravan park and it's right at the end?
So
that maybe?
So I'll start, and Richard will definitely come in on this. But certainly, I've met with the management of Haven. I think some of the stuff they've done there is really positive. They're part of the economy for us. People come and spend their holiday money here. I would always go to Butlins myself, but other holiday camps are available. But interestingly, one of the things that is changing there is their ownership kind of methodology. So they used to have lots and lots of owned caravans. It's a bit more of a mixed economy now. So that definitely will be part of people who live in them permanently. And in some of those, not necessarily Haven, but in some of those settings, there are limits around 10 months a year. You can't live in some of those properties for 12 months a year. So we recognise that accordingly. That is more of an issue, I would say, for our friends in Swale, and actually what they've got out on the Isle of Sheppey. It's limited, and actually the ownership model, like I say, on the Haven site in particular, has been changing over the last few years.
Yeah. I wasn't actually going to add too much more to Vince, because there are a number of people that got their hands up, and Elaine is fit to bust in a minute, I think, if she doesn't get answered.
We don't want that.
But simply to say that we are aware of that issue, and our guys are trying to work through it.
Okay, all right. Well, look, Elaine, then let's hear your question. If we could bring a mic up to the front, please.
Wait for the microphone.
Wait for the microphone so everybody in the audience can hear.
Thank you. I've now got an armache. I had backache sitting in the central hall last night. Okay, I'm going to talk about Section 106 money. Right, I'm going to read you a few things that I've written, because there's lots of issues. Why is Section 106 money held in the council bank account, and why is it not in an account where it gains interest? Now, you are holding, on behalf of Who Parish Council, a rather large amount of money, in excess of £1 million, which we need to build our new community centre. The current one is not fit for purpose. Now, if you gave that money to us now, we would invest it, and that would help, because obviously what you've got to give us, that we've bid for, is not going to cover the cost. Now, there has been in excess of £500,000 Section 106 money from developers for green spaces, which has been allocated to Dingate. 500,000 sports facilities, which I am told is allocated to Over the Road, but nobody can tell me what they're doing with it, apart from that there's a large building, £425,000 is going to go for something, but no one can tell me what. With regard to the new community hall, which we are very hopefully shortly going to go for planning for, we are having obstacles put in our way, lists of things that we need to do that are costing many thousands of pounds out of the parish precept. Yesterday, and I haven't had time because I was out last night and I've been busy all day today, I saw a report that the Dillywood Garden Centre, which we all know is closing, is now going to go for planning for 12 executive-style houses. Have you ever driven up that road? And I'm being told that the assessed that £100,000 from the developers is going to be allocated for health, education, etc. But there will be no Section 106 money.
Okay,
now, my
right,
answer to that is no Section 106 money, no houses.
Okay, Elaine, there's lots of elements in what you talked about there.
Unsurprisingly, I'm not going to have the exact detail of everything you're asking, but I'll absolutely commit, and I think I've got a good track record between Richard and I, to come back on that. And if there's specifics from a health perspective, I know Leanne and Teresa can help with that, and we'll come back to you in good time to make sure you've got that information. But by the nature of it, not to be a pedant, but I will be for a second, if there's money for health and education, that is part of a Section 106. I have some views generally, which I'm not going to share tonight because we haven't got enough time because it's a huge political ideology. I don't think health and education should be funded by Section 106. I think it should be funded by general taxation by the government. But we have the system we have. So from that perspective, we'll absolutely make sure of that. As regards the sitting with Medway Council, that's perfectly normal. What I will do is I'll go away and check with our Treasury management team what happens to that money while it's sat there, and where does the, because it will sit in a bank account of some description. We have a Treasury.
FOI, and I've been told that it's not in an account. But Karen earlier on raised the section.
Where would the money be being held then?
I don't want to fall into a father tell it was just resting in my account comment, but that's for the comedian lovers out there. But I'll go away and look at that, because my presumption would be it would sit effectively in our general fund till it's drawn down. Now, as I said earlier on, there'll be something around when the contribution is made. It may well be. And again, I don't know the specifics. There may be examples where the contribution hasn't been paid yet because house number X hasn't been sold. So I'm absolutely happy to commit to getting you that information. There's officers in here who I know will help me to do all the hard work in pulling that together. But yeah, our Treasury management, we manage the money from an investment perspective pretty well. If we didn't, our financial challenge in Medway would be even bigger. And I'm really proud that actually that is an in-house team. Lots of councils have that out with other people. They are Medway Council staff. So Elaine, I absolutely commit to getting you that information and getting that understanding as to where the money's sat and who it's with. On Dillywood, it's not appropriate, as you'll appreciate, it's not appropriate for me to comment on an individual planning application.
Okay, we've literally got a few moments, so.
At the back, because she attended the PRD consultation. A lot of the work that was done on that had already been done on the neighbourhood plan team. All you needed to do was ask us.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
noted.
This lady here.
Let's move on to the lady over here in blue.
I've got a question for Teresa, if I may. Listen, I appreciate we don't understand totally the responsibility of the council, and we sometimes think you're responsible for everything, which you're clearly not, but you have a really powerful voice.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's really great that you are engaging with the ICB. So can you tell me, when it was identified, I think it was about 10 years ago, that the Peninsula and Strood was the only area in Medway not to have a healthy living centre, and 106 money was actually allocated towards that has now been transferred to the £15 million refurbishment in Chatham, who've already got a number of healthy living centres. How could that have happened without us all knowing about that after all of those promises? And my specific question to you, Teresa, is what involvement would the council have had in that decision-making process?
Well, first of all, the ICB didn't exist 10 years ago. It was the CCG at that time. Yes, just a name, but it was a different organisation. And I'm afraid I don't know the detail of that, but what I do know is that we've got to get a health centre here and one in Strood. So I'm afraid wherever that money has gone, and I think that there's been some sort of rumour mongering and imaginations about it's gone to Chatham. I don't think actually that is true, although some of it definitely has But whether it was ever all 106 money or government funding at the time, I'm afraid I don't know the detail of that. What we've got to concentrate on now is the future. We need a health centre in Strood. There's one of the Strood councillors here tonight, Zoe Van Dyke, who came, just sitting along the road from you actually, who came to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee with her ward colleague David Field to ask specifically for that process to start for Strood, where she represents. We need a health centre here on the peninsula. We will need it even more as the population grows and continues to live longer. So it's up to us to be those powerful advocates for the ICB to make that happen. And we will do that.
And can I just
we
ask...
also need to muster any other funding that we're able to get. And so we're always on the lookout for partners, for doing things differently, for innovative ways. Nobody on this platform and nobody in the health service wants people on the peninsula to have an inferior service. Things have happened in the past that have led to that. Well, if I don't believe it, then there's no hope, is there? You know, if we don't believe things and everything's a counsel of despair and an idea develops that nobody here is going to get anything, actually that might have as much locus as me and everybody else trying to make sure that you do get something. The council influences. Vince and I have got seats on the executive of the ICB. Leanne and Richard are on the Integrated Care Partnership. It's the Integrated Care Board that was put in place by the last government to commission healthcare. Because you do need to remember that GPs are individual businesses in their own right, commissioned by the NHS, who can leave at any time and come in at any time and give their contracts away at any time. So that also needs modernising so we get a more secure sort of service.
So, Teresa, can I just check then that the ambition is...
What I hope is that the ambition is real. We know what the situation is and we want to make it happen. We've got a new government who know it as well, because our MPs... And the reason that none of the MPs are here tonight are because they're on a 3-line whip in Parliament. We can't always organise to line up when they're not going to be in Parliament. We've got to do our things locally. We're delivering government policy. We're working with them all the time. We will tell them what you've said, but they're not here because they don't want to hear what you've got to say, and they're all open to you contacting them, all three of them, at any time.
Okay.
So that's the situation. We hope and believe and are putting things in place to make sure we get what we need. And your voices in that, when the time comes, are really important.
And I think it's worth, pointing out, with all of the stuff that's been said this evening, and I think that the message has been received loud and clear from everybody who's on the top of the stage here, that there is a lot of people who are unhappy with the status quo on the peninsula and want multiple things to change. That message is going to be going back loud and clear. So the younger chap in the middle there with the longer hair, who's also been waiting patiently, will have, and this will probably be our last question, I'm afraid. We've probably got about 2 minutes left.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Thank you all for your time. I think we all want to make Medway better. That's why we're all here at the end of the day. I have quite a boring question about local government finance, if that's okay. I think we all recognise the challenging climate that you're operating in and the extraordinary pressure that your statutory services face and the political decisions that you're making this year to balance the books. Can you talk a little bit more about the structural changes that you're making in the next 5-10 years to manage demand in social care, in TA, all of those things that means we don't have to have the same kind of difficult political conversations every year until something really bad happens.
And TA being?
Temporary accommodation.
Temporary accommodation.
So I would, perhaps if Teresa's happy to start on social care, adult social care, and then I'll wrap up with the rest. But really good question. Not boring at all.
So with the help of Leanne and her team, we've invested £2.5 million into adult social care with 80 new jobs, and we're about 2/3 of the way of recruiting those people. When we took over the council, adult social care was in a state where they couldn't meet their statutory obligations, and Leanne was absolutely clear to me as I came in to be a portfolio holder that if we didn't do something, the system would collapse. That's how honest and frank and supportive an engagement we have with our officers. So that is happening. That's meant that some of the temporary staff have now taken consolidated jobs, and they're actually moving towards a completely new structure We've brought back in the back office staff to support the social workers. We've created new posts. We've got greater management oversight, and we're being very, very careful about the way the budget goes. The other thing that we're intending to do, and I've been a huge advocate for this, and I'm very proud that I've had the Cabinet support, we're going to build a care home of our own. And we are going to do that because we can't keep sending people out of Medway. We want to have a gold. All the other, our predecessors sold everything off. That was a huge mistake. It leaves the council absolutely vulnerable. If a care home goes bust, we haven't got anywhere to put people. It's going to be a modern facility where people can go for respite, where they can be helped to be re-enabled if they've been in hospital or had an accident to become more independent.
And is there a timescale for that?
We're hoping that it will start coming out of the ground next year. Correct. And we've got our own company, Kindy, in the corner there, who lots of you have spoken to, providing assistive technology. They will be working with us on the care home to keep people independent for longer in their homes, and also to work on the many, many new developments that are happening in that field of work, to make sure that people get things. And there will be lots of new jobs, so don't forget that.
Okay,
so,
Teresa?
So 3 main things that we're doing to help adult social care, because as you saw, that great big spend has got to be meaningful, and I want everybody in Medway to have a gold standard service.
Okay, Teresa, thank you very much. And Vince, last word to you.
Thank you very much. Can I firstly thank everyone for attending tonight. I appreciate you won't have liked necessarily every answer, but I appreciate you coming out, and hopefully you found this at least slightly more entertaining than the Liverpool-Everton game on the box. No spoilers, don't worry. That's not a boring question. Blimey, that's making the system work. So thank you for asking that. Teresa's covered one of the biggest chunk on the pie chart. Temporary accommodation, massive issue, not just in Medway. I don't want a single child to be sleeping in a bed and breakfast tonight. I don't want a single child to be sleeping in substandard temporary accommodation tonight. Sadly, I know both of those things are happening in Medway on my watch. That's not acceptable. So we're shaking the system up. We're building our own. We're buying our own temporary accommodation because the market, frankly, is ripping all of us off as taxpayers, all of us off. So we've taken a brave decision to invest, to save. It will not save on day 1, it will not save on day 2, but actually, if you look at the most recent council reports, the early purchases of that temporary accommodation are already seeing dividends, already saving all of us as taxpayers money. And even more important than the money, making sure those families and individuals, nobody wants to end up in temporary accommodation. If you're in those circumstances, often because of no fault of your own, I want those individuals, those Medway residents, they live here, we've got to support them. I want them to have the services they need. So we are making those improvements, and they're good because they're better outcomes, but they're good because they're saving money as well. But it would be naive to not recognise as well, finally, as we spoke about right at the start, local government reorganisation is going to impact on that. So whatever happens, I'm probably going to be the last ever leader of Medway Council, and I want to hand over services, facilities in the best possible way that they can be. And whether I'm involved or not in the next council will be for the residents of that new council to decide. But whatever happens, I want to make sure, and we're working on it every single day, to deliver the best outcomes for the people of Medway. Thank you so much for that question, and thanks to everybody. Yeah, I think questions handed in.
So we are going to have to wrap up now. We could easily continue this conversation until 2 o'clock in the morning, I've got no doubt, but we've got to hand the school back to the school for tomorrow. We haven't got all your questions through this evening, obviously. Please make sure you write your questions down and hand them in to the team, and then you will get a bespoke answer. So please make sure you hand your question to somebody with a lanyard. Teresa Murray, Leanne Farratt, Richard Hicks, Vince Maple, thank you all, and thank you all this evening for coming out to Medway Matters Live. Thank you.